Well, I want to welcome you to this discussion. It's a pretty important week, actually, for the issue that we're talking about, as you're about to hear. For many of you, this may be the first time you've had a full discussion of where we are in our effort to build in the United States a green economy that's strong enough to lift people out of poverty. This is what we think is the next big challenge that the country faces. We've gone through a long period where those of us who believed that we could fight poverty and pollution at the same time were facing a real uphill climb. And that uphill climb was based on the idea that we constantly got pitted against each other. If you're for the environment, you're against jobs, you're against the economy. If you want to grow the economy, you're going to destroy the planet. And we, and the Democratic Party and the progressive movement, were at a real logjam for a very long time. Recently, we finally got smart enough to say, actually, the Apollo Alliance and others, we can grow the economy in a way that actually respects the earth, that actually honors the earth. We can actually have a stronger economy if we actually make sure that the jobs that we are creating are jobs that respect and honor the environmental wisdom that we all know and want to honor. What that created was a discussion that was now called the discussion about green-collar jobs. The idea that we used to have the blue-collar jobs, they were good jobs in a way, that first stepping stone out of poverty, but they also tended to be polluting jobs, jobs that weren't good for the earth. And now those jobs are being outsourced and taken away from workers. So where is that first stepping stone out of poverty? Well, we say those should be green-collar jobs. And we are very lucky to have here on this panel some of the foremost champions of making this dream real, making this approach real. And you're going to get a chance to hear from some of the people who have, I think, done the most work to actually ensure that we do include the labor movement in our discussion about jobs. Often community folks, when we fight for jobs, the labor movement gets nervous because they feel like we're going to be taking jobs away from the union track. That is, again, a false distinction, a false dichotomy. We're going to be able to talk about that. Often people assume that if you're talking about urban politics, poor folks, low-income people, they don't care about the environment. That's also not true. We're going to hear about folks from the South Bronx who are actually busting that stereotype wide open. And all too often, our leadership in Congress has not been as bold or as visionary as we needed to be. And we're going to be hearing from a congressperson who has actually got a big announcement to make about legislation that's going to be moving forward this week to create green pathways out of poverty for the first time. So this is a very important panel. It's a very important discussion. The person I want to bring up first is a true heroine, a true shero in this movement. She coined the term, we've got to green the ghetto. And when she first said that, people said, what is this child talking about?
They still do.
And so she started working. And she started to create this vision of the South Bronx, which has been the dumping ground for New York City for a long time, being a real green mecca. And without stealing any of her lines or stealing any of her thunder, what I can say is that she has become to this movement what Ella Baker, what Rosa Parks, what Coretta Scott King, what Dolores Huerta, what all of the great women leaders of the last century were and still are. She is that for us now. She is leading urban America forward to a place where there's jobs for everybody, where there's clean water for everybody, there's health for everybody. Her work has been honored and recognized. She got the MacArthur Genius Award last year. I think she'd get a round of applause for that again. She was invited to the TED conference, which nobody in this room has been allowed near, I bet. She went there and had people crying and stuff. We are so lucky to have world-class leadership at the grassroots level, making a world-class impact. Please welcome to the podium Majora Carter.
Every time I see Van, it makes me wish I did have a little brother just like him. I swear.
Adopt me.
It's true. Although I sometimes like to tell people that he actually is my little brother, and he just lives on the West Coast. But it's really exciting to be invited to a conference like this, because I do feel as though on many different levels that I do, just by virtue of being where I'm from, represent a whole bunch of folks that don't necessarily feel like they're a part, of any real democratic process whatsoever. And I think that comes from a feeling that they often don't feel that the democratic process really gives a damn about them. And I'm from the South Bronx, the very notorious South Bronx in New York City, poor, Latino, black, and largely unemployed. And every city in America has a South Bronx of its own, and any one of them is a point source for the kind of, polar bear drowning, greenhouse gas pollution that everybody wants to curb right now. Most people are more concerned about the polar bears. And we know that, living in our communities, that polar bears and everything else are way more important than we are. But here is what this is what years and decades of urban planning, in the bluest state, in the bluest city in one of the bluest states, has actually produced, for us. There are no polar bears here, remember that. Now, environmental justice, for those of you that aren't familiar with the word, simply is a principle, and in our case, a practice, that no one community should have to deal with the brunt of lots of environmental burdens and not have any kind of, or enjoy any environmental benefits. And right now, race and class have pretty much everything to do with where you're going to find the good stuff and where you're going to find the bad stuff. Good stuff being things like parks and trees, bad stuff being things like, coal, mountaintops cut off, to get coal, or waste facilities or power plants. And I'm not really talking about like the extinction of polar bears at all right now. I'm talking about the kind of slow death sentences that things like that actually give to a community. Now, you all know the kind of health problems, that are associated with any of these kind of facilities. And our folks aren't necessarily finding their way or willing to buy their way out of their communities either. They really can't. Manufacturing jobs that actually once provided lots of opportunities have actually been supplanted by places where civil rights, aren't really even on anybody's agenda. And we know the free trade isn't always free, but in many cases it's always in fashion. Now, you may not be aware of a study that Columbia University just did last year that showed that correlating proximity between fossil fuel emissions and children's actually caused brain damage, in them, which reduced their ability to learn. And imagine that if this child is already going to a substandard school in a poor neighborhood, that his nervous system has been overburdened, by the effects of these toxins. There's no real prospects for the kind of jobs that one would need to live a real full life and might end up in jail. There's also a really historic battle brewing in the New York State legislature right as we speak. Manhattan, the wealthiest part of New York City and one of the wealthiest areas in Manhattan, doesn't handle any of its own waste at all. And the mayor actually supported environmental justice communities' ability to fight for an equitable solid waste management plan that mandated borough self-sufficiency, which made sense. You handle your own crap that you produce. Duh. But there was a small group of Manhattan progressives that decided that they shouldn't have to. And actually, I got to tell you, on a certain level, discovering the ringleaders were gay and black was just like, you should be on the front line with us, homies. I mean, this is just inappropriate. But I'm ashamed and embarrassed by them, but I do think it speaks to the fact that, how even progressives sometimes get a little less progressive when their real estate values are at stake. But that's where we are right now. But honestly, that's why we're greening our own ghetto. We believe that clean tech, and for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, it's industry, that either has a net positive benefit to the environment or creates projects or products that support it. and the development and the improvement of it. And everyone seems to agree that we've got to clean up our environment, and that is absolutely true. In preparation for that, my agency started a program called Project BEST, which stands for Bronx Ecological Stewardship Training, and we train folks from our community. It started out as a strictly South Bronx project. It has grown to all the 5 boroughs, and we've got folks traveling almost 2 hours from Staten Island to come and take our program so that they can learn the skills of ecological restoration and green roof development and installation and brownfield remediation, because we know that these are the kind of jobs that our folks can learn with the proper training. And we're very excited about all of them. And also another thing, since industry, we're trying to preserve some of that, as much of it as possible, so that we can actually keep people in our country with jobs. The kinds that went overseas, we need some more of those things. We have a project called the Bronx Eco-Industrial Park, and we actually researched 5 different companies we wanted to locate on this really interesting piece of land that has both barge and rail access, collection of businesses use recycled materials. Reducing waste, again, using less fossil fuels because they're using barge and rail as transportation, and they also could create hundreds of jobs for the local community. And we just really appreciate that, because it's, again, using well, they're not quite natural assets, but they're assets in terms of how you do economic development. And the bottom line is, this is the kind of stuff that's already in our community, and we want to make it useful in the short and long term. Getting rid of some of the truck traffic, reducing the kind of pollution from construction and demolition to degree places as well. These are the kind of products that actually can be produced and reused and installed, and we're doing this because the community on so many levels has already told us this through community planning and visioning workshops, and we know that these are the kind of jobs that continue to happen. Now, I know that that doesn't really look or sound like a real typical neighborhood beautification project, because it's not, but in an area, where there's an 25% unemployment rate, where 25% of our kids have asthma. Those kind of jobs are a vision, of the kind of beauty that you just will not believe. And, whoops, sorry, there's a missing little picture, but that's okay. In this case, the words say it all, okay? And right now, that vision, for a much more healthy, environmentally, economically sound future for our community is under threat, because the city has decided that same piece of land that is uniquely positioned to be the kind of industry that could support people on the ground who desperately need this. They're trying to build a 2,000 bed in that jail. Yeah. I don't even know if you heard me say that. 2,000 bed jail in that same place. And and again, knowing that the kind of pollution sources that are constantly, being put in our community, knowing that, look, little kids like this are being, targeted to go to places like this. We know that there are cities and states that actually base, how many jails, how many prison beds they're going to build by how many kids are reading at grade level by the 3rd grade. And is this the kind of country that we want to continue to live in? I wish that there were more progressive members in our governments who actually have the kind of foresight and knowledge and leadership that Congresswoman Solis has been able to show. I cannot wait to have her tell you more about the historic bill that she's working on. And my congressman has definitely been very supportive in terms of policies around environmental justice, but refuses to support anything like an eco-industrial park. In fact, he's proposing that same area that I told you about should be used as a bird sanctuary. Now, but what in the world is this world coming to when progressives who won't take responsibility for the waste they produce allow the prison industrial complex to flourish like a viable, economic development strategy, or advocate for birds over green jobs? Which I think if we build this kind of stuff, the birds will benefit also. They will. But now, now's the time, is to move a green agenda that moves people out of poverty and improves our environment. Being progressive is supposed to be about making progress, no? Yeah, I think so. Training lots of people to do the work of greening our communities is going to require a Herculean effort, making sure the strategies are in place so that those green jobs are performed by people that desperately need them will require an even greater effort. I think you'll all agree with me that a country filled with happier, healthier people with living wage jobs that actually improve the environment is probably better for all of us. I truly believe that environmental justice is the civil rights of the 21st century. Martin Luther King Jr. was not the only person up on that mountaintop looking at the promised land. I was there, and I know you all were too, and I'm looking forward to building a much greener country with all of you. Thank you.
I think we should give the sister another round of applause. She's just... I'm asking everybody to keep it to 10 minutes, which is why she was, keeping it brief, because I do want us to have the question and answer, because we're so deep in this that, people may, just want to ask basic questions like what is a green collar job, et cetera. So we'll get to that. But first, I want to bring up Jane McDonald-Pines. Now, a lot of people, when you think about the labor movement, you don't think about the historic efforts on the part of the labor movement to actually advance what are objectively environmental interests. People act like labor is late to this. A lot of workplace health and safety issues are at bottom environmental issues. It's really, we've been pitted against each other and played against each other sometimes that we forget. Workers got to go home and breathe air and drink water, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we are lucky to have emerging in the labor movement are more and more voices that are saying we have to be a part of the solution. The labor movement, the people who do the work in this country, are going to have to be the main force in greening America. If we're going to move from a dirty energy strategy where we're wasting a bunch of energy, if we're going to build those solar panels, if we're going to weatherize those buildings, if we're going to build those wind farms, U.S. workers are going to be people who have to do that work and who will benefit economically and who will help the country. And one of the strongest voices for a sane, smart, sophisticated strategy to continue to move labor to the head of the line in this movement is on this panel today. And I am especially indebted to her, and I want to say publicly how thankful I am to you. When we and the Apollo Alliance and the Ella Baker Center were thinking, how can we help po folks get some of these jobs? How can we help low-income people, poor people, get into the labor movement and become green-collar workers? Everybody told us there's one person to talk to. There's one person who will understand where you're coming from and can help you navigate all of the complexity of this labor movement. And that person is on this panel. I bring to you Jane McDonald-Pines.
That's a tough act to follow. I wish my two boys were here listening to you. I have two teenagers. If you don't mind, I'm going to just close this. I think Regina's handing out my handout. I'm doing the low-tech route today. And really, thank you for the opportunity to be here. As you might know, the AFL-CIO is a strong partner and supporter of the Apollo Alliance. A number of our unions are affiliated with the Apollo Alliance, and the relationship has been enormously productive. I'm a training person, not an energy person, and I've been educated about energy issues over the past few months by Van and Jerome Ringo and others, and I've learned not only to say carbon sequestration, but to actually understand what it means. But that said, my focus is really on kind of training and workforce development issues, and so when we were approached by Senate staff and Congresswoman Solis' staff about making sure that we linked the development of jobs and training with federal energy initiatives, we really saw it as a historic opportunity. there aren't many occasions where you have a federal program, a federal policy initiative that calls for investments in and incentives in an industry like the energy industry, where you have a real opportunity to think through the impact on jobs and training. And I think what we're doing not only is important to this process and this issue related to energy efficiency and renewable energy, but I hope it establishes a pattern in the future, because we know every federal initiative affects jobs, affects workers, and affects skills. And if we can create this kind of collaborative relationship among the committees, among labor and community and other groups, I think it bodes well for working together on so many other things. But when I first kind of was brought into this discussion about the green labor market, there was a lot I didn't know, and I think there's a lot we still don't know. It reminded me of a story I used to tell my kids when they were little, the 6 blind men and the elephant. In the story, the 6 blind men confront an elephant, and each of them touches a different part. The man who touches the leg believes the elephant's a pillar. The man who touches the tail believes the elephant is a rope. The third, who touches the trunk, thinks the elephant is a tree. The man who touches his ear thinks the elephant's a big fan. And the fifth, who touches his side, says the elephant's a huge wall. The sixth says the elephant's like a pipe because he touches his tusk. And they begin to argue about what the elephant is. Well, a woman passing by hears the discussion, and she asks each of them what they think the elephant is, and she tells each of them that they're right, because each one touched a different part, but the elephant is really a sum of all those parts. And in the same way the blind men looked at the elephant, I feel like I'm looking at green jobs and green collar issues, because there are so many different angles and so many different aspects of this initiative. For example, we really need to look at existing jobs and how they'll be altered. We also need to look at similar jobs that might be involved in producing a different product. And then we have a whole set of new jobs that could be created in alternative and restructured industries. I guess our bottom line and our approach to this whole effort is that green and quality have to be synonymous. Green jobs have to be safe, clean, and healthy. They have to provide economic self-sufficiency and skill portability. They have to contribute to sustainable communities, and they have to provide a voice for workers in the workplace. And in a word, from our perspective, they should be union jobs. The Sanders bill that was the Sanders-Clinton amendment to the energy bill that passed last week was a result of a number of collaborative efforts. As Van said, we became engaged in conversations, I guess, way back in March about this. And we in the labor movement saw some real opportunities to create a sustainable public program that linked quality training to good jobs. In trying to think about a conceptual framework and how I view this issue, I tried to pull together this chart, which a colleague of mine prepared for me, since I'm still pretty incompetent when it comes to drawing circles using words, so I want to give her credit for it. But I thought it helped me think about how we would create a labor market system that would both help meet industry demands for skilled workers and provide quality training and placement. So I'd just like to kind of review it with you. It's a very rough framework, but I think it really captures some of the key elements of our vision of the workplace development that are now embodied in legislative proposals to move this forward. We believe the workforce system has to connect workers to good jobs with employers, and it also has to ensure that workers have the skills they need to obtain and retain good jobs. And it's really government's role to help make that connection. So on the left side, you'll see I've tried to list what people, certainly more expert than I, have suggested a part of the labor market demand from employers in construction and manufacturing and transportation and utilities. And on the right, I've tried to just list some of the jobs that workers might fill, are already filling, and might be needed. Clearly, it's not an exhaustive list, and I'm sure those of you here and in this area could certainly add to it. But I think kind of the most important thing are some of the connecting activities that help link workers and employers, and the vital role that public policy and public programs have in doing that. In the first circle, you see labor market information, and one of the things we tried to address right away in our discussions with folks is that, you know, we need to get a handle on ongoing and future research related to the labor supply and demand for these jobs, occupational trends, current and future skill requirements, and wages and benefits. For example, I went on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website recently, and I just typed in energy auditor, which I know is a job that's, you know, folks have talked about. You can't find it anywhere. It's not listed on the BLS website. If that's something you wanted as an individual to try to pursue and try to figure out, you know, what the skills were needed, you'd have a very hard time. So it's an example like that that suggests at the federal level we certainly need to create a very robust and expanded labor market information program. The second circle is really labor exchange, and that's the part where workers are counseled, their skills are assessed, and they're linked to employers who are in the market for workers having these skills. And again, part of the proposals we've been talking about to Representative Solis' staff and others is to make sure that our state employment security and unemployment insurance systems really are at the centerpiece of that, because they are the folks that match job seekers and employers. And then finally, education and training. It's in everyone's benefit that as we proceed down this path and as we make investments in education and training, we link them to recognized academic and skill competencies, we align them with industry needs, we benchmark them to the highest quality standards, and we create portability so that the folks in South Bronx have portable skills so that they can move elsewhere as the need arises and that their skills are recognized. And so what we tried to craft, again, in conjunction with folks, Apollo Alliance and members of Congress, is a collaborative process that involves federal and state governments, as well as energy training partnerships that involve joint labor management programs and community programs. It's certainly very easy to illustrate on this chart, and it certainly will be a challenge to implement, but we think that, you know, just the work we've done takes us a major step forward. And the bills that are, again, being developed and will include investments in labor market information, an expanded role for the federal government and state governments, and really helping to get a handle on where the jobs are and the kinds of skills that are needed. It expands the labor exchange capacity so that workers and employers can be matched in the labor market. As I said, it creates partnerships between labor and community groups and educational institutions. And it's a broad set of training opportunities and options for folks, from occupational skills training, safety and health training. As was mentioned, you know, safety and health training is going to be critically important as workers confront new industries and new skills. We want career ladder programs so that folks can come in at the entry level and move up through apprenticeship or other means. And what we want to make sure is that we reward states that are moving toward you know, energy efficiency and renewable energy. So there is a link in terms of state renewable energy portfolios and the kinds of training that would be funded through these grants. And as Van mentioned, we're working on the Pathways Out of Poverty, which is a component that will really address the kinds of issues that he talked about. Certainly we've got a long way to go, but we're very excited about the work that's being done in Congress. And you know, we're going to work collaboratively, I think, be joined at the hip with a lot of the folks on this panel over the next several months and beyond as we really try to make sure that this partnership works. Happy to answer any questions, and thank you.
You know, when you look at this piece of paper and you're thinking to yourself, you know, looks fairly complicated, but you can kind of make sense of it. For a grassroots organization like the Ella Baker Center or like South Bronx, Sustainable South Bronx, trying to understand how we do workforce development in the United States is like getting a PhD. I mean, it's unbelievable how challenging it is. But when you think about it, maybe the easiest way to think about it is right now, all the job training that we have in the country, you think about your community colleges, you think about your labor unions or whatever, they were all designed in the last century. They're actually training people in the pollution-based economy, the poison-based economy, all the things, the waste-based economy, all the things that we're now trying to move away from. Our entire job training system is still enacting. So the challenge, this is a monumental challenge for the country, to realign our workforce training, to realign our job training with the green, clean future that we want. And so, you cannot do that if you do not have good allies in the labor movement who understand what it is that we have, how we got there, and how we can make those smart steps moving forward. So I just want to thank Jane one more time for being willing to take on this incredible challenge for us. The other thing that you can't get this done with, you cannot get this done without federal commitment and leadership at the national level. I don't care how many Van Joneses or labor leaders or Majora Carters are out here trying to figure out how to get those job training dollars moving, try to get people these jobs. If the federal government is missing in action, we are not going to make it. I've talked to a number of eco-entrepreneurs, green business people. They say very clearly, we want to do green business. We want to do business the right way. We want to honor the earth. We want to do solar. We want to do all this wonderful stuff. We used to worry that the consumer demand would not be there. We don't worry about that anymore. We used to worry that the technology wouldn't be in place. We don't worry about that anymore. We used to worry we wouldn't have the capital investment, that the financial community wouldn't get this, they wouldn't be there. We don't worry about that anymore. You know what we worry about? We worry about the workforce. We worry about who are we going to be able to hire to do this work. And it is into that breach that we have now congressional leadership stepping forward to say that this is a world-class challenge. The United States is the biggest polluter. We want to make it the leader in clean and green economy. It's a world-class challenge. We have to have a world-class workforce ready to go to meet that challenge. And the foremost voice for this approach on the Hill has been Hilda Solis. And what you have to understand when you're a grassroots group, I got out of law school in '93. Newt took over in '94. I never had any reason until January to come to this town, okay? No reason to come out here and waste my time. So I didn't know anything about how to get anything done at the congressional level. Luckily, the Apollo Alliance has been a great ally, Center for American Progress and others. But one of the beautiful things now is that some of our grassroots leaders and activists are getting elected now to some of these offices. And so when you talk about a Hilda Solis, you're talking about somebody who understands. She understands the grassroots. She understands the neighborhood. She understands what's going on. And she is in office to make a difference. And not only is she one of the leading Latina leaders in Southern California, she's also a leading environmentalist. And she's a congresswoman. And she's leading this charge, and she's coming to the stage right now. Give it up for Hilda Solis.
I thought I was just coming here to give a little special, small presentation. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me here. And you've heard a wealth of information already about what we're trying to do in Congress. And I want to applaud the panelists. And I really like this idea. It's laid out so even Congress people could understand it. And I just want to say that...
Got extra copies.
We're going to need a lot, let me tell you. I, first of all, want to thank the progressive movement, the House of Labor, Environment, and all our friends that actually helped us take back the House. If it wasn't for you all helping us, I would not be in this position that I am today at this moment. There would not be a select committee on energy independence and global climate change, which Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, created earlier this year, which was not an easy task, even amongst our own Democrats. And she placed me on that committee as one of the few Latinas, the only Latina. My other minority colleague there, I don't really think we're minorities, we really have our voices heard there, is Mr. Cleaver from Missouri. And I was placed there because of my work on environmental justice. And you've heard a little bit about that. But that's how I got involved in the environmental movement. When I was a state senator, we worked hard to pass and codify President Clinton's environmental justice executive order. And we were the first state in the country, in California, to pass that. And as a result of that, I believe there are at least 30 other states now in the country that have adopted that, have passed that legislation, and now we have a bill, because I have to mention this too, we also have a bill in the House that will address environmental justice and codify and make sure that EPA and all the federal agencies implement that executive order. So we are just on the tip. We're just on the tip or cusp of really, I think, beginning to see a movement occur here on Capitol Hill and across the country, because those voices have needed to be heard, and you have all helped us by gaining back the House and giving us that leadership role to be able to talk about these kinds of issues. So I want to say thank you to you folks, because we're going to need more help. There are a lot of people who still don't believe the science, that there is something happening in our environment. But yet poor people, people of color, know historically that there's always been an imbalance. There's always been an imbalance. I'm not going to say we're going to be quick to blame anyone, but now we're saying we want to empower ourselves. And one way of doing it in the Congress is by providing legislation that will create an opportunity for a new revolution. A new revolution that will put the United States, I think, on the brink. And forget about the denials of the past administration, that energy conservation and all that was the same old, same old. There's new opportunities for us. And I really believe that a whole society has been left behind in the past maybe 14 years, but for me, 7 since I've been in the Congress. I've seen programs that help empower our communities devastated. Money's taken away from community development block grant programs that can help with housing, renewable energy, LIHEAP programs that we know work have been devastated. Those monies have gone away. They've gone to the military infrastructure. Now we have an opportunity to make sure that we don't see unfair trade agreements, but that we see a level playing field here, and that we prioritize our economy here in the U.S., and that we keep those jobs here, and that these jobs, we're going to call them green-collar jobs, but they can fit in any mode. I mean, they can be called anything. But what it is going to do is, I think, make America proud again, that we are not going to be outsourcing jobs, because it has devastated not just poor communities, but manufacturing communities in Ohio. I think that's why you saw the terrific change that occurred in November, because people were fed up. And I agree, our folks in the auto industry have been hit hard. And I think there's a whole lot of minutia that could quickly be put away if we just come to reason and we think about how we can become our own entrepreneurs here, make products here that people will buy. It may cost a little bit more, but the federal government has a job, and they can also help incentivize and provide that tax break and research dollars that has to go in to new hybrids or hydroelectric vehicles or electric vehicles, a more cleaner mode of operation. I can see people in my district who were working or are working for IBEW, the electricians, helping to install solar panels in our houses, in our schools, in our child care facilities, in our government post offices. That Lord knows how old some of these post offices are that really waste a lot of energy. They don't even recycle, I heard. So I'm thinking, wow, we've got a ways to go. And the public is relying on us. They're trusting us to do this. We think in 10 years we can create over, I think, at least 3.4 billion jobs, something like that. Million, I'm sorry, retract. We are going to invest 3.4 billion. We are going to put that money in, and it will go into the local community-based organizations that you've heard from. It will go into some of our workforce training models that currently exist, and it will go to, say, new entrepreneurs in the private sector, because a lot of that intelligence is out there in our communities, and a lot of it is being driven by young people who are saying, if I had the chance or if I had the capital, this is where I would go with this research and new idea. And if we, as a federal government, can help push that along, then I think we have a role to play. And I see it happening on a recent travel coming back from Europe now with the Select Committee under the leadership of Ed Markey and Nancy Pelosi. Everybody in Europe is talking about new jobs, new technology, and why is it that the United States is lagging so far behind? Why is it that we don't have those incentives provided by local government, state government, and the federal government? And I sit there in horror thinking, boy, this train left, and we better jump on it. We better jump on it. And I kept hearing that over and over and over again. And I know that it's going to take a lot to change the mindset in our communities, because there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to be very resistant to this change. But I see an opportunity, as I said earlier, a revolution that's right there in front of us. And we have to take hold of it, and we have to somehow inspire people to become a part of it. If we're going to be part of the solution, then everybody has to have a seat at the table. And that's one of the things that we have been precluded from having the table setting more reflective of our country. And it isn't just the inner cities or people of color, it's rural America.
That's right.
We're talking about biofuels, we're talking about ethanol, we're talking about placing turbine wind opportunities, renewable efforts that can come from the heartland. And I really believe that there is a big interest for that. And once people start hearing about it in the Midwest, they're probably already going to start investing in some of these new innovative technologies. And if other countries, if other third world countries can do this, then why can't this country make a statement and make our mark, and make our footprint one that isn't so burdensome for the rest of the world? Because after all, we are the biggest polluters, and we are slowly being followed by some of the other emerging countries in the world, China and India. But I have to tell you, on my recent travel overseas, just hearing what China and India are trying to do, there's opportunity for us to also export our intellect. Instead of always bringing that here, we have an opportunity and a challenge to do that too. So I'm not going to stop just with community colleges and training programs. I now want to say we also have to think forward and bring in our research institutions, our university systems, but also, I think, really do more to help provide more scientific research in those programs that we do know work. The National Science Foundation, NOAA, all the military infrastructure that I've come to recognize, satellite systems that can project what climatic changes are going to be occurring. Why is it that we can't develop that communication system and technology that kind of is operable, that works for everybody? We'll put a price on it. But that's our technology that we can help provide as an incentive to bring peace to some of these countries right now that, you know, they are looking to us for leadership. They see a new Congress, and they want to know how to work with us. And we have all that intellect, and we can do a whole lot by sharing. I've heard it from scientists from other countries, and they're saying, please, Congresswoman, when are we going to start this change? So the challenge isn't just for me, but it's for all of us. And I think that we really have to go a long, long way in making sure that more members of Congress kind of grasp this opportunity right now and move ahead. I'm really delighted that the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, has allowed me the opportunity to serve in this capacity right now and to move forward with this bill that we'll be introducing hopefully before the end of the week, that will take people out of poverty, that will encourage people, youth at risk, even ex-offenders who are now reforming, rehabilitating. Nobody even talks about that anymore. Nobody talks about that 5 million new block of people who are living in poverty. We're going to target families that have 200% or poverty level, which in some cases may be high in some parts, may be low in other parts of the country, but nevertheless it's going to target those families, working families, that need a bump up, that need a helping hand, not a give out, but one that helps to empower them. because they're going to decide which career they're going to fall into. But I can see so many young people right now being inspired, and people who need to be retrained because their job no longer exists. We have failed in the workforce investment programs with those programs like folks that lost their job because of NAFTA. I mean, when I see the statistics and reports there, money goes unused. I want that money. I want that money, and I want to put it in green-collar jobs. And I know that there's going to be a lot of new information that's going to come up as a result of seeing a chart like this and filling in more columns and more types of jobs. Right now, the government tells us that we have a shortage of people that are trained for these jobs. That enough, enough said. We need to fill it. And I think we got the resources to do it. So I just want to say thank you for having me here. I have to excuse myself because we have a vote. And the House moves on, and I've got to be there to help take those votes. But I want to thank you and just ask you to please contact your member of Congress or senator or senate, or she, and let them know how important this job is. This green-collar job creation program that we're establishing. We don't have a number yet, but you have a handout and you have a telephone number there, and you can also look us up on our website and contact us, because this will be out before the end of the week. And I'm excited that we are working in partnership with the Senate, with Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton and all the folks and the labor folks and just everybody, the community-based organizations and our leaders who really believe that there's a better place for us and a safer place for us. So thank you very much.
Now, that's real leadership. That's real leadership. Don't let nobody tell you we don't have any leaders in this country. That's real leadership. Good, thank you. I'm going to take 10 minutes to do some framing comments before we open it up. But that's real leadership. And all too often we hear from progressives, we don't have any leadership. We don't have any progressive leadership. I mean, I don't know how you get more progressive than Maxine Waters or Barbara Lee or John Conyers. I don't know how you get more progressive than them. I mean, you'd have to go on another planet to be more progressive than them. And now Hilda Solis is coming on. So I want to challenge the paradigm when we think about progressive leadership. Let's start including and thinking about some of these people of color who are in Congress who are taking some of the most bold, visionary, courageous stances that they can. And let's give them the same support and the same respect that we give to some of these other leaders. We should give her a round of, she's gone, we should give her another round of applause. That's real leadership. So I'm the moderator, I'm also a panelist. We're trying to save on microphones up here or something, I don't know why, but anyway, so I'm also a panelist. And so I want to take my 10 minutes. And I want to talk about why I'm so passionate about this. First of all, I want to state the obvious. This is weird, right? This is weird. This is an environmental panel with a labor person, a Latina congressperson, and 2 black activists. That's bizarre, okay? That's strange. And I also want to say, y'all are strange. Y'all are weird. Because first of all, it's late. Y'all should be getting in airplanes and taxis and stuff and going home, but you're here. You saw something in that program, and you decided, you know what? I want to come and check this out. So we're the bizarre people. We're the strange folks. But I want to suggest that we are on the edge, on the verge of what I do believe is the next environmental revolution in the United States. And it's about these values, okay? So I want to tell you how I see it, what I see is happening, what I think is coming, and why the next time we do something on green-collar jobs, I think it's going to be overflowing. And you can say, I remember when y'all wasn't nowhere around before it was cool. You can say, I was at the green-collar panel when it wasn't cool. We are going into the third wave of environmentalism in the United States. That's what's happening. The third wave. The first wave was conservation. The original conservationists were Native Americans, right? They conserved for 10,000 years the whole continent, fully populated with an unbelievable array of species diversity, biodiversity. They were the masters of conservation. So we have to give them that honor. Then, in 1492, the continent got put under new management. And as a result, you suddenly needed a conservation movement. You know, you needed one real bad. It's like, can we not cut down every tree? Can we not pave the whole continent? And so that was the conservation movement, the Teddy Roosevelts or whatever that we celebrate. But that was its day, and that movement continues. Then you had, in 1963, the inauguration of the second wave. A woman wrote a book. It's called Silent Spring. Her name was Rachel Carson. That book hit, and you know how Al Gore's movie hit and changed the discussion? Well, back when people used to read, right? Right? Books, you know, it was the same thing. And people got excited. Why? Because this woman said, this is not just about creeks and critters and lakes and streams. That stuff is all beautiful. But environmentalism is now about human health effects. It's about the fact that we're poisoning in our industrial society our own children. It's about the fact that every cell in our body now is carrying industrial toxins. And we've got to do something about it. And that book inaugurated that second wave. And the second wave was amazing. Why? First of all, you got the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the EPA, Earth Day. It was a brilliant moment in American democracy. Nixon had to come along with the movement. That's how powerful it was. All right? But, there was something wrong with that second wave. The second wave, as beautiful as it was, as visionary as it was, as powerful as it was, it did not take seriously questions of class, of race, of power, of income. And what happened? What happened was that at a subconscious level, perhaps, the mainstream white polluters and the mainstream white environmentalists wound up collaborating to put all the poisons in the black community, in the Latino community, in the poor communities. The toxic dumps started all moving in one direction. They call it not in my backyard. So you're regulating, but you're regulating unfairly. And so you had a whole generation that grew up bearing the brunt. Children being born with asthma, black, brown, poor children being born with cancer. And so in the 80s, a new movement had to come up. The environmental justice movement that said, don't make my child suffer. Don't make my child be sick so we can have an industrial society. Yes, regulate, but regulate fairly. Regulate with equity. Regulate with justice. And that environmental justice movement in the 80s had to come and reshape and fix and save and rescue that second wave. Now, that is a painful history, but it's important that we recognize it and learn from it, because now we're going into a third wave. And this third wave is a different wave. If the first wave was let's conserve the natural bounty of the past, and the second wave was let's regulate the industrial problems of the present, this third wave says, no, let's invest in the solutions for the future. Let's invest in the clean and green technologies of the future. Let's invest in hybrid cars. Let's invest in solar panel. Let's invest in high-performance buildings, biodiesel, organic food. Let's put our money and our genius and our technology toward actually solving these problems. Now, that is one of the most powerful, beautiful developments on the planet right now. This move in this direction. And yet, there is a danger. And the danger is simply this. Will this green wave of new technologies, new products, new services, will this green wave lift all boats? Will it lift all boats? Are we going to build a green economy that's strong enough to lift people out of poverty? Are we going to see all these new jobs, all these new services and technologies as new job opportunities to create green pathways out of poverty? Or are we going to settle for eco-apartheid? Are we going to settle in the United States for eco-apartheid? Katrina woke us up. Gore woke us up. We don't want to go over the ecological cliff. And yet, right now, you have to have money to be a part of this green economy. You got to have enough money to buy a hybrid. You have to have a house to live in to then buy the solar panel. What about the people who are struggling for bus fare? Do they have a place? What about the people who are struggling to live indoors? What is the meaning of this green economy for the poor, for the people who've been left out? Our firm, passionate belief is that we can build a green economy, that we can build a green economy that includes everybody, that gives everybody a stake in the clean and green future. How do we do that? That's our challenge. That's our challenge. We say it's very simple. It's very straightforward. Take every urban problem that we have, every problem afflicting poor people, every problem afflicting people of color, rural po folks, and put a green opportunity frame on it. Put a green opportunity frame on it. That's all. If Pookie and Snooky and Chiquita and Josue and all the brothers and sisters on the neighborhood and the block, if they are needing a job, what we say is, hey, we've got to retrofit a nation. We've got to retrofit a nation. We've got to weatherize millions of buildings so they don't leak so much energy. Teach them how to do that and give them that job. We've got to put up millions of solar panels so we can capture the energy of the sun and power our cities. Teach them how to put up those solar panels. We've got to learn how to work with new materials. We've got to build wind farms. Teach them. Give them that job. Why? Why are we so passionate about it? Number one, you teach a young person how to put up solar panels, you know what that kid is? That kid is on their way to becoming an electrical engineer. That kid can join the United Electrical Workers Union. That is a green pathway out of poverty. You teach a young person how to weatherize a building so it doesn't leak so much energy, double pane that glass, that kid is on the way to becoming a glazer. They can join a union, green pathway out of poverty. And you don't stop there. That first job can lead to a promotion, can lead to being able to start your own company, your own construction firm, your own career. So we say, give us green-collar jobs and job training. And we go beyond that. Look at these schools that are failing, these schools that are falling down. Now we have to say, wait a minute. We need to have clean technology training centers in every public high school to teach these young people the technology of the future. That's how you incentivize a new investment in science and math for urban America, now supported by the people who understand that we've got to invent our way out of this problem. You can fix the schools. You look at the violence in the community. Why are people shooting each other and selling drugs and stealing cars and wilding out? Because they don't have the opportunities that they need to be a part of the legitimate economy. Well, you can say to that young brother, I'm going to take that handgun and I'm going to replace it with a caulk gun. I'm going to put you to work, right? Doing something beautiful, doing something dignified. So what we say is that the solutions for the earth, the ecological solutions that we're talking about, by meeting them head on, we can also meet the social and economic challenges of the country. That is our opportunity. So what we're saying is we can fight pollution and poverty at the same time. In fact, we have to. And what we're saying is that rather than having society with ecological haves and ecological have-nots, rather than having a society where if you have enough money, you can buy your way into the green economy, but everybody else has to struggle with the last century's pollution and poison, which will eventually catch up to the whole thing anyway and sink all efforts, that we can build a green economy strong enough to lift people out of poverty. What this means is two things in conclusion. Number one, the environmental justice movement now has to change. We have to change. We spent 20 years talking about equal protection from the bad stuff. Equal protection from poison, pollution, Katrina. Now we have to say, and we want equal access and equal opportunity to the good stuff that's coming. We want equal access and equal opportunity to the good stuff that's coming. So we have to stretch, we have to grow, we have to learn how to be in different kind of coalitions and how to have dreams again, okay? And that's hard. It's hard to see somebody like Majora stand up and say what she wants, because you get scared that she may not get it or something might happen to her. But she's doing the right thing, and she's bringing out good things in people. Bankers and people who haven't returned nobody's phone call are running trying to help her now. And now people in Oakland are starting to get a little uppity. And people in Newark are starting to get a little uppity and saying, well, we got a dream too. Yeah. We want to see our children told something besides don't shoot somebody, don't sell no drugs, don't get pregnant, and then you walk away. And you don't give them any kind of a future and tell them what they can do and what they can be. So this is an important moment for us. We're starting to dream again. Amen. We're starting to dream. And we believe that our dream is a good dream for the whole country. Yep. We believe our dream is a good dream for everybody. We believe that if we say that we don't have any throwaway energy, we agree with you. See, we've been tricked against each other and used against each other and separated from each other. And no progressive constituency is strong enough to deal with this military petroleum complex by itself. That's what we learned the past 6 years. None of us can deal with these people by ourselves. But if we take those children that have been left out and locked out and we put them in the middle, and we say, when we fix it for you, young brother, when we fix it for you, young sister, it's fixed. So we're going to put you, not the margin, we're going to put you in the center. We're going to say that the green economy is about you. It's not just about reclaiming stuff, it's about reclaiming folks, reclaiming community, reclaiming people. That's a green economy. That's a green economy. And then when we do that, you see, then we can build a green growth alliance. Has the best of business, the smartest, best, most visionary business people standing with the best of labor, standing with the most far-sighted and big-hearted of the environmentalists, standing with the Majora Carters. And that is the key to a progressive governing majority, a pro-democracy movement fighting for a green economy strong enough to lift people out of poverty. That's our way forward. That's not how we take America back. That's how we take America forward. Thank you very much. That's good. Okay. Back to moderator. That's great. I see a number of hands now. I'm supposed to write the stuff down and pass it in. Don't worry about that. I'll repeat your question. We'll start with you.
How do you think you get these children you're talking about interested in math and science and technology, because it's into mastering what is, somewhat difficult subject.
That's good. Well, we'll take 3 questions and then we'll let the panel kind of deal with it. So one question is, how do we get young people interested and engaged to want to step up to this challenge? Other hands? Here.
This makes a lot of sense, but how do you break through, particularly in the labor movement, how do you break through the learned behaviors and the traditions and get a new message across that actually makes sense and gets into pragmatic and practical work?
So the second question here. First question, how do we get the young people, the urban folks, to be willing to step up to the learning challenge here? The other question is, how do you actually get the labor movement? It's great to have a map, but how are we actually going to move the labor movement? We'll take one more question here.
How do we get the big environmental players involved in this issue? The NRDC, the Sierra Club, all those people who have been focused on, necessarily so, the animals and land. How do we bring those players into this labor movement?
Great. So the 3 questions really go to how do we build this coalition, right?
Yeah.
How do we?
We have to.
How do we get the young folks, urban America? How do we get them excited? How do we get labor to get excited, practically? And then similarly with the big environmentalists. So riff a little bit for us. Y'all must have thought about some of these questions before.
Yeah.
You got to use your mic though.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, our tech people.
No, our communities in general, we don't look like what you think an environmentalist is, clearly. But what we found is when you sort of have to meet people where they are in any way. When we first started talking about the environment in the South Bronx, it was specifically because kids were getting sick, from the polluting facilities that were there. Mothers, once they understood that, they were like, okay, we need to do something. Now, with our job issue becoming more and more dire, we actually, unfortunately, have to turn people away from our job training program. I mean, people come from shelters and go through the 10-week training to take our program. And we have to be really hard line and make sure that people are up to the challenge. But we provide as much support as we possibly can, and it is hard. And yeah, we're sort of hemmed in specifically by the confines of the program, which is the price. Frankly, if we could do more, we would. But people see their need, their best interest tied up in getting jobs and understanding. And then the benefit of it is also that they're also improving the environment. But frankly, that's a second thing. It really is. The first thing is like they're improving their economic status. And secondly, there's this other benefit. And they're like, oh, this is great too.
That's great. Jane.
Dealing with K-12 education is probably beyond the scope of this panel, but I did put education and training professionals on both sides of the diagram because I think one of the challenges we're going to have is creating capacity among the education system and the training system to understand these new industries, these new jobs, and really build in teacher training and other programs a connection between math and science and the industries that we're going to be creating. So I think, and that I haven't really seen anywhere in terms of kind of teacher training programs, but it seems to me that's one of the things that we could use some federal investments in.
Good. Let's get a couple more questions. And
oh, I didn't answer 2 or 3.
oh, go ahead.
In terms of the labor movement, I guess the fact that 22 unions are now partners with the Apollo Alliance, we've got examples of the IBEW and other unions, the iron workers, working in conjunction with community groups to create pre-apprenticeship programs. And really part of the purpose behind the Solis legislation and the Sanders-Clinton bill in the Congress is to really provide institutional support for those partnerships, to create pre-apprenticeship programs and pathways out of poverty for folks. So, we're very hopeful that the bills that are before Congress will help to take the models that are kind of being funded now out of private and philanthropic resources, take them to a scale and we're able to replicate them. In terms of the environmental players, I don't have in front of me the list of groups that supported the Sanders bill, but I know it included the Sierra Club and a number of industry groups. So I think certainly the training proposals have garnered a lot of support from industry and environmental groups.
That's great. We're going to go here, and then we'll jump the aisle.
I'm not used to phrase, I'll shut your lights and gas off, and it's funny how you brought up how, in some ways now the young kids in our generation, and the young generation can actually go and help grandma have a safe house and have good heating, reduce her electric bill. I've been building trades, been a painter for 30 years. I'm a congressional candidate in Western Michigan. We have a lot of things going on in Western Michigan with metals technology, with solar development, battery technology. we have to look at how we reinvest in the Midwest and other parts of the country where we have a clear and present need of things that need to be rebuilt and restored in this country.
Right.
And we have a workforce and people who are just looking for someone to believe in them, as you were pointing out, which is really inspiring to hear. But we need to show that that possibility exists so it can be the link to inspire someone to say, I want to be there. I want to learn what it takes to succeed at that.
What's your name?
I'm Kevin Cotis from Western Michigan.
Kevin?
Kimmin.
Cotis?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure your name gets on the tape. You said you're running for office? Michigan 2nd Congressional District. Well, in our...
Our second Michigan Energy Fair in Manistee, and we have people from all over the region.
Great.
Who are coming in and showing all the various possibilities of things that can be done to improve your heating and wind and solar and other things like that. So there's the movement going on in the heartland right now.
Great. Well, in our nonpartisan way, we say more power to you.
Yeah,
brother.
right. Just let me make one
Yeah,
point. One feature of both bills, the House and the Senate bill, is to require that the Labor Department create a clearinghouse of best practices, because we know this is a modest effort in terms of the effort to create these partnerships. But the notion is to get these to scale and to help folks that are working at the state level to try to build a clearinghouse so that we don't need to reinvent the wheel every time somebody wants to embark on this.
Good. I'm informed we are actually at time. So here's what we're going to do. Say your question. No speeches, though we love the speech we just got. Love it. But say your question briefly, and then we'll all make closing comments. And I'm sorry we ran a little bit late. So I see you way in the back.
Yeah, I would just like to know, what do you want us to do whenever we leave this room today?
Great. What you do? Great. Here.
How does this sort of green justice movement lift up women? I haven't heard a lot about that in the panel yet.
Great. Women? Yes.
This is more a comment directed to one of the comments you made. There is a model, as far as schools are concerned, in Wayne, Connecticut. It's Brainerd Elementary School, and it is a green building. Part of the program is students there have to become familiar with those features in the school, how it works, and so forth.
Great. Perfect. That's great. Others? Here?
I want to know, what partnerships or strategies do you have for working with juvenile correction systems or criminal justice systems to engage prisoners or ex-prisoners who have been disenfranchised and have been disengaged and do not meet the criteria to qualify for your apprenticeship programs or your training programs?
Okay.
Great. And then one last question over here.
I'm just curious to know, what is the communication strategy for on the bold vision that you put out? What's the story that we're telling? Who are the new storytellers? How do people like me who work in the media tell those stories and tell them in new places and tell them better than they've been told?
Great. So I'll let you guys scribble really hard. And this is, by the way, Dan Seligman and Jeremy Hayes from the Apollo Alliance. You raise your hand. Give these guys. They're modest. They're sitting there very quietly, but both at the local level in Oakland, Jeremy Hayes was boots on the ground with us for a year to help us get our Oakland initiative moving forward. And at the federal level, this guy right here has been running himself ragged with a baby on the way, like in 20 minutes or whatever, to get this thing done. So give them a round of applause. The Apollo Alliance. We would not be here without the Apollo Alliance. And we will have the bill alert for Hilda Solis will be at apolloalliance.org. When she was here, her bill's going in, we think tomorrow. You go to apolloalliance.org, and that's how you can get in contact with her. Closing comments from you guys, and I'll take a shot at it, and then we'll be done. Who wants to go first?
Well, gosh, let me just touch. Yeah, absolutely follow the bill number. Send letters to your members saying vote, support, and most importantly, find the money. We don't want, what we don't want to do is set this program up as a competing program for other workforce training programs. So it's real important that we link this to the kind of financial incentives that are being given to the industry overall, and we find money because it's a still modest effort, somewhere between 100 and 125 million. we want ultimately this to get some legs and to be connected, and we don't want it taken out of current workforce training programs. So that's kind of an important message too. In terms of lifting up women, I know the pathways out of poverty, you know, we address at-risk families and you know, really try to target groups that are in need. In terms of the partnerships with the correctional system and dealing with offenders, I know that some of our unions, there was a recent article about the iron workers working with gang members in Los Angeles to try to bring them into apprenticeship programs to deal with issues of records and driver's licenses and that sort of thing. So I know that there are models out there to deal with it. I guess I've lost the other question, but you know, we're certainly, part of my job is to work with our affiliated unions to get them knowledgeable about this effort and to communicate. And obviously that's going to be part of my job from here on out. So hope that helped.
So real quick.
Use your mic.
Oh, gosh, I keep thinking I've got such a big mouth. Anyway, question about women. Van is leading by an excellent example of how to lift up women. This has been a really amazing thing. More men should follow that example. There are not enough. I mean, it's frightening, I'm sure you'll know. But anyway, especially the women in the group. The second question about making the connection with the criminal justice providers, we don't actually do that. Our work is so word of mouth that they just will come to us, and it absolutely is not a barrier at all. It's more like, as far as when we do employment placement, that is the only thing that stops us from getting people jobs in specific areas. Like if an employer will say we cannot or will not take it, and then that is noted, absolutely. But all we ask for is a GED. Who are the storytellers? Folks like us are coming up every single day. I'm a co-host on Sundance Channel, the Green Program, and part of what I'm hoping my new job will be to actually use that as an opportunity to lift up more voices like this. I don't have that responsibility right now, but I'm working on it. And let's see, and what can you actually do? I mean, I don't know exactly what all of you are doing in your own lives, but I think one of the major things is to understand that each and every one of our actions has a reaction for someone else. And that is something that we do not understand. When you throw something away, that it often will come to a community like mine and spew all sorts of nasty, toxic stuff. But also understand that, just like when you share the burden, it's half the trouble. You share the joy, it's doubled. So think about green in that respect, and specifically because we're all going to ultimately benefit from this as we go forward. Okay.
That's great. I do think it's important in terms of what do we do now. Hilda Solis, today or tomorrow, is going to introduce this legislation. As she mentioned, it's modest. It's $120 million. Bernie Sanders basically amended the Senate energy bill to include some of this money. They're amending the House bill. This is historic. This is the first step toward creating a clean energy economy that could include poor people. Mm-hmm. We need to tell every blogger, we need to tell every MoveOn.org, all these people, celebrate this. Jump up and down about this. This is a big, big deal. So I think the most important thing we can do is to support her and lift her up, lift her name up, so that we have somebody in queue to be the next speaker, of the House. So that's one thing. With regard to the examples of good programs like the one you mentioned in New Haven, there are good programs coming up all across the country. And what we need to do is to start seeing them as a part of a movement and saying this movement needs to be represented in this progressive coalition. The last thing I'll say is this. You mentioned the communication strategy. This is a story that needs to be told. Certainly the Ella Baker Center and others are trying to tell this story. We need help. We need people who understand framing, who understand communications, who understand this new media environment to say this is the next big story. How poor people and working class people and rural folks and displaced workers grabbed that environmental solution and made it a big solution for everybody. That's what's about to happen. And I think it will happen faster and better with your help and with all of your help. So thank you very much.